Oh wait, so Francine is recused. Oh, all right. You can do the honors. I'll read it.
You know what? I think
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Holmdel Township Zoning Board of Adjustment. Today being January 25th, 2023.
Dimitri, you're gonna have to
You gotta put yourself on mute, Dimitri. Because we're getting a background.
Call to order. Jason, please.
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, and the regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 5:39-1.5, I hereby announce that adequate notice and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in a notice dated January 14th, 2023, that was sent to the Asbury Park Press, Two River Times, posted on the bulletin board and on the main access door to Town Hall, filed in the clerk's office, and posted on the town's website, www.holmdeltownship.com.
Roll call, please.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Here.
Mr. Burkle?
Here.
Ms. Campus? Ms. Gerhart? Here. Dr. Latif? Dr. Latif is absent. Mr. Luciani?
Here.
Mr. Orphanatopoulos?
Here from a distance.
Mr. Giampolo?
Here.
And Dr. Shaw?
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and stay standing for a moment of silence to honor police and military wounded or killed in action. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Before we begin, Rob, just for the public and the board, so our new chair is had a family emergency in Florida. He's on this speakerphone here and watching remotely. Under the Open Public Meetings Act, he's allowed to participate. He's not going to chair the meeting, obviously, because he's not here, but he will be participating. He apologizes, obviously, for not being here in person. Just wanted to get that out.
Okay, moving on to item 1, the Verde Woods. Jason.
Verde Woods 2, 739 South Floral Avenue, Zoning Board Variance 2022-3R, Block 50.13, Lot 1. Applicant seeks amended site plan approval to modify the architectural plan submitted to the original Zoning Board approved 2017 application. The applicant is also seeking relief from special condition number 5 and general condition number 1 of the resolution to allow applicant to begin constructing the approved development with the modified architectural plans, but without a written statement from the Holmdel Board of Education.
Want a seat? Alternate number 1, John, for the absent Mr. Latif. Ms. Campus is recusing herself from this hearing, and then we'll seat Mr. Shaw for Ms. Campus for this item. So this is a continued public hearing for the applicant.
Yes. Good evening. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Craig Giannetti, the law firm Dave Pitney, on behalf of the applicant RMH at Verde Woods LLC. This is an application for amended site plan approval in connection with a prior D variance and site plan approval previously granted by this board back in 2017. Excuse me. Property is located at 739 South Laurel Avenue, block 50.13, Lot 1 consists of about 3.4 acres, located in the R40A2 residential zone. As the board may recall, we appeared before you on November 30th to present the application, and in particular, the relief we were seeking from a condition of approval. In particular, that resolution granted a D1 use variance in order to construct just single-family, detached single-family homes in the zone where the zone, it's okay. And we were proposing to construct, those single-family homes, 8 single-family homes at a density of 2.35 units per acre. The zone permits actually 4 units per acre, which could be up to 13 units, but at least half of the units have to be townhouses, where here we're not proposing any townhouses, it's just the 8 detached single-family homes. As I mentioned,
If I may just, since we're in a new year, we have a couple of new board members. Those board members have listened to the video of the prior hearing and have signed the necessary affidavit, so they are eligible to participate.
great, thank you. So with respect to the condition that the applicant is seeking relief, if you recall, special condition 5 of that resolution required the applicant to get written statement from the Holmdel Board of Education confirming that the Board of Education will agree to or to place a school bus stop for future school children at the intersection of Laurel Avenue in the entrance of the property or in the cul-de-sac of the development. And we submitted with our application letters from the Board of Education where they were stating, we can't commit to a bus stop at this time. We don't even know if there will be a bus stop. If or when it's determined their need is for a bus stop, we'll consult with the town, we'll consult with the police and determine appropriate location. As part of that, there was also at one point a suggestion of a, I don't know how to describe, I guess a pull-off on Laurel Avenue for the bus to possibly park for the pickup. We discussed it with the county, as Laurel Avenue is a county road. They opposed that idea, and our previous testimony outlined their reasoning as to the safety concerns they had with such a stop. And then we also had testimony from our traffic engineer at the last meeting as well, concerning the safety of that and the adequacy of having, a bus stop on Laurel Avenue. And that's how it currently functions with homes along Laurel Avenue, that they have this bus stop. But in the end, we couldn't achieve the resolution or that condition. Not that they said no, but we just couldn't get a commitment, which was the condition. So that's the relief, excuse me, we're seeking. At the last meeting, we presented our civil engineer, Patrick Ward, and our architect as well as Roger Mumford, the developer, explaining the revisions to the architectural buildings or in residential structures, the change in facade, kind of the upgrade, but even as part of that, the units actually shrunk slightly, just given what they see as the market and what people are looking for these types of homes. We presented and completed the testimony of our civil engineer, we presented and completed the testimony of our architect, and we presented and completed the testimony of our traffic engineer. And all that was left is planning. At the meeting, there obviously was discussion with the board. There was also, comments from the public. There was comments about a depressed curb in the cul-de-sac for wheelchair access, the variety of trees and rows of trees on the south side, putting a screen between the units, pad between the generators. So since we had time between our last meeting and now, we revised the plans to incorporate those changes, and we have our engineer will come up tonight to explain what those changes were, and then provide the planning testimony with respect to the prior D-variance relief and the other variances previously granted. Now, again, it's been our position, we're not changing the D-variance that was granted by the board. We're not changing any of the bulk variances that were granted by the board. We're viewing it as an amended site plan. It was our position that could be by a majority vote like any site plan is, since we're not changing the variances. I know Mr. Flagler had varying opinion on it, or a differing opinion on it, but at least just for the record, that was our position as to the amended site plan. In addition, and maybe we can get into the record, Mr. Mumford testified, as the contract purchaser, and recognizing and seeing in the resolution from 2017 that the neighboring development, came out and objected and had various issues they were raising. Mr. Mumford met with representatives from the homeowners association of that development, and we believe came to a amicable understanding as to the development and what he's trying to do. We noted at the time we did send a letter to the property management company of Bow Ridge identifying 3 things that we were agreeing to do as part of this application, and if we can mark it into the record, we said we would include it at the next meeting as an exhibit, so it's in the record confirming we've agreed to these items. And I believe we're up to A9. I guess while I get it, want me to read it?
Yeah, for the benefit of Dimitri, if you could just read that if it's short.
Sure, it's short. So the letter's dated November 30th, 2022, from Roger Mumford Homes to Dean Barber, Executive Property Management in North Brunswick, regarding new project adjacent to Bow Ridge. And it says, Dear Dean, it was a pleasure speaking with you and members of the board of Bow Ridge and Ms. Height. We appreciate the dialogue with your group. As per our conversation, we are willing to agree to the following items. 1, examine the stormwater pipe that runs under Continental Drive in the existing engineering reports, and if necessary, according to the professional recommendations, will flush the pipe to allow for a maximum ease of flow of water through the pipe. 2, install a board-on-board fence along Continental Drive starting from the right-of-way bordering Laurel Avenue to the end of the last home that runs parallel to Continental Drive. In addition, we will supply supplemental landscaping bordering the fence on the Bow Ridge side. 3, install a fence behind the homes that border along Boxwood Terrace. In addition, provide a privacy screen from the first home that runs parallel to Boxwood Terrace to the last home. Green Giant or similar screening. I can be reached on my cell phone or via email. Thank you for your consideration, Sean Brightman.
You have a copy of that?
We do.
Okay. Right, we'll get a copy of that over the board secretary. We got copies? Oh, here.
I think I've seen this.
I just gave all of them my extra copies. So again, with that, we've effectively completed the majority of our presentation, addressing the review letters at the last meeting, addressing the traffic, and the various comment letters we received from the board professionals and the municipal agencies. We have our engineer and planner available tonight just to present the changes to the plan based upon the feedback from the last meeting, and then present planning testimony. So at this time, unless there's any questions of me from the board, I'd like to call Patrick Ward.
Okay. When do you want to comment about the variance, Christie? Okay. And Kate, do you have any comments at this point in time yet? Or you want to talk with after we get to the planning testimony?
Yeah, I think we should let the engineer explain the changes that have been made since the last hearing, because all of the site plan, everything related to the site plan will be part of the use variance.
Fine.
Are you still under oath, Patrick?
And Mr. Ward, you were previously accepted as an expert in the field of civil engineering, and you recognize you remain under oath. After providing your civil engineering, you then put on your planning hat and provide some planning testimony in connection with the variances previously granted by the board. So with that, maybe you could provide some of your background, experiences, and license in the field of professional planning.
Okay, so I'll start with just the changes to the site plan. 30,000-foot level, it looks very much like the same plan, but some nuance changes. Each of the homes now has 2 air conditioning pads and a space for a generator. The coverage on our site plans was updated accordingly to accommodate those. The landscaping was revised. First and foremost, we've added screen walls at the rear of each of the units. There are some foundation plantings on the side of that screen wall. There is a row of evergreens on the south side with the board-on-board fence that was previously mentioned in that memo. And on the north side, there's a row of evergreen trees and a fence as well. That's the crux of the site plan changes. The general layout, the units remain the same from the November meeting. I think we should, yes.
Dimitri, can you hear this okay? You're probably muted, but
Yes, I can hear it.
fine, thank
So,
you.
Patrick, if you could, just for 1 second, you could hold that plan up toward the back wall, because the only camera is in the back. And just
That's all right. I can hear what he said, and I understand his changes.
All right, good enough.
And these changes are reflected on the revised site plans that were submitted to the board, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So that's,
So A10 is a colored rendering of the site plan of the latest
and
submission
the
set.
the latest plan is version 11.
Yes, revision 11.
Dated 12, at 12, no, that's small.
12/7, I believe.
12/7?
Yeah.
In that sheet C300 of the site layout plan. So, I'm sorry, didn't you address the depressed curb?
Yes, so at the, and I'm not sure if our grading plan reflects this too fully, but at the end of the northern sidewalk in the cul-de-sac, one of the board members had requested a depressed curb for ease of access. We're happy to provide that there.
Is that shown on the new exhibit?
This is just the site plan, so it's not shown on here, but we'll make sure it's
That's
carried
a
through.
Condition?
Yes. And that's it for the changes. They're quite modest compared to the original testimony. Happy to answer any questions.
Bob?
I have a couple of questions.
Bob, could you use the mic, please?
Pat, did you take a look at possibly extending the sidewalk around the cul-de-sac?
We did explore that. You're talking about in the bulb area.
Yes.
We could do that and accommodate the coverage within the maximum limit. This plan doesn't reflect that because it was submitted prior to this comment coming up, but it's something that could be accommodated on site.
Yeah, because it would make more sense than having, the handicap going into the cul-de-sac and then have to, it just makes it a cleaner, since you have the ability with and still stay within the coverage, lot coverage. And also on the parking lot for the visitors
Yes.
to the east, or, to the east.
Right here, under the tree.
Right. Could you add you can add a sidewalk there? Because what happens is that last space, the people would just be getting out into grass.
Okay.
You see what I'm talking about?
I do, right in this location, yes.
Right. And that would still keep you under the impervious coverage.
I just got a nod from the applicant. We'll be happy to provide the coverage, the sidewalk around the entirety of the bulb of the cul-de-sac, and then in that east of the, we'll call it the guest parking area off the street there.
Right. And then the row of trees near Laurel Avenue to the east, I say the northeast, that row of trees in there? No.
Here?
Yeah. Because you're saving about 9 trees in there. And did you have any consideration of cleaning out all this what I'll call scrub? Or were you just going to leave it natural?
No, there is some undergrowth that's not
Right.
natural. So yeah, the intention is to keep the trees as required and then clean up the area for a more presentable property.
Okay,
That's in this area in the northeast.
Correct.
East of home number 4.
correct. That's all I had for now, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
board members concur with those changes? Seems reasonable, I mean, just
Yeah, I think,
adding impervious coverage, we always caution a little bit, but here it's a very small amount and probably makes it for a more practical
and
setup.
and it makes it safer. So you don't have, if there is children in the development, riding around in the cul-de-sac because the sidewalk doesn't, go all the way around.
Okay,
Well, I think it's fair that we asked Dimitri, that was, I thought, an issue you brought up, but did you understand all that, and do you have any other questions on that? Or are you okay? You might be on mute. Maybe not there. Dimitri, are you there?
he's still down there.
Come back.
Yeah.
Oh, no worries.
Is any other questions of the board or the professionals on the engineering? And then if not, we'll qualify him as a professional planner and get into the planning testimony.
Just let me go around the table again to make sure, does anybody have any other questions on the site plan, and the engineering? Seeing none? You're okay? Kate? You're okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Six, right? 6. Dimitri, we got you back. Do you hear okay?
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It got disconnected. I missed part of that. I think Bob was talking about the circulation plan for the sidewalk, and I heard what you guys said about the little piece by the guest parking. And the only thing I lost at that point, the audio, whether there was going to be a crosswalk and a depressed curb at that point going across, so it's a complete circulation pattern for the sidewalk.
At the bulb?
No, on the other end where the guest parking is, where Bob mentioned about a little piece of sidewalk, I lost the audio after that. Did you put a depressed curb so that the people on the sidewalk can cross to the other side?
No, that was not discussed. What was mentioned is that in the northeast corner, there's some trees and there's some scrub underneath, and they will clean this scrub out from underneath the trees.
So what I was saying is, at the end of the guest parking where you're adding that little piece of sidewalk, at that point there should be a depressed curb and a crosswalk so pedestrians can make a complete circle in the development and go across to the other side with another depressed curb.
Yeah,
Not to interrupt you, Patrick, but there was comment in the condition of adding a crosswalk and a double yellow safety striping. I don't know if that's the same spot or that's somewhere else, but
we do have the double yellow safety striping. We can add the crosswalk here with the depressed curb to create the circulation. That's no issue.
okay.
Yeah, I think that might have been, or I thought that was referring to the one in the back by the bulb. But
Well, with the double yellow, it's at the front. So
correct, the double yellow one is at the front.
Did you hear that, Dimitri? So they've agreed?
Yes,
to
I did.
all
I
those-
don't even know if you need the other one in the back between house 1 and 7. If you have the one in the front, it makes a complete circle for pedestrians and walkers.
Right.
So shift the crosswalk closer to the entrance near that parking area.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay with that, Bob?
I would just
Yes,
say,
just leave the one you have on the plan, just add the other one.
Leave it.
so add-
Leave both, leave the other?
Just, yeah, leave what is shown on the plan.
leave that. Add
Leave
another.
that and just add that one.
Okay.
Okay, that completes the testimony on the civil engineering of the site.
Yes, so
Question.
Any other questions about that?
Public.
Mr. Chairman, just to summarize, that all of these additions still keeps them under the impervious coverage requirement
Well,
for
adding
the
the crosswalk
stormwater
is-
management.
Yeah, adding crosswalk simply is striping.
Strike,
Doesn't add
exactly,
any coverage.
doesn't add any coverage.
Yeah.
All right, just so all the board members understand that it will not affect the stormwater management.
Yeah, because, well, in that regard, that they didn't change the stormwater management plans from prior, but they had in fact decreased the house sizes.
Correct.
So they're a little bit under in coverage compared to what was designed for.
Correct,
So if we add a little bit, we're probably undoubtedly still under, and the differences are minor.
correct.
Okay. Attorney has suggested that before we totally close up the testimony on the site plan, that we open it with board approval to public comments on the testimony we've heard on the site plan, or questions only on the testimony we've heard so far this evening. Does any member of the public have any questions about the testimony we've had tonight?
Nancy Cagliostro, 214 Pebble Beach Court, Bow Ridge Community. One question I have, how many kitchens in these houses? Okay,
Let's turn that one on there, on the far right there, underneath.
because previous designs had multiple kitchens.
One kitchen.
One kitchen, that's comforting. The second thing is just a basic question. On parking in communities, does the town have a regulation? Because I know that a lot of things are getting built that don't have adequate parking for guests. I'm not,
Is that directed towards me or the town?
well, if anybody,
Well,
is it
from a
adequate?
town point of view, if either Bob or Kate would care to respond?
Residential site improvement standards are governed by the state of New Jersey. So the state of New Jersey has an overarching regulation for any residential development, whether it is single-family, multifamily, small lot single-family like this, or townhouses. The state of New Jersey has a requirement for that based on the number of bedrooms, and in a situation like this, it includes visitor parking as well. So the applicant does comply with
All right,
those
good.
requirements.
Because one of the concerns we have is that when they do have guests, they'll try and park in our community. So that's just something I wanted to know, if there was regulations.
The state overrule,
Okay.
the municipality, it supersedes anything the town would do, so we don't
Okay.
have one.
And
And
I
just
think
to-
this is just questions.
I just
but-
want to address one point there too, because we did talk about parking at the last meeting. Unlike other townhouse projects where it's like a single garage and then a driveway
Right.
space, these are two-car garages with the two spaces in the driveway. In addition, there's full basement as opposed to the prior units that didn't have a full basement, so there's plenty of storage where you don't have the issue of people using the garage for storage.
Yeah, well, this is why we became a little bit more amicable with Mr. Mumford than before, because the other was just totally outrageous in issues. I think he said this is just questions, but I just
At
want to
this
make...
time, yes, please.
Okay, so maybe I could put this in a question. Can the Board of Ed force Bow Ridge to make a bus stop for any community? This is not just pointed at them, for any community on our private property.
That's not a question we can answer. You have to
Okay,
ask the Board of Ed.
but I just would like it on record, it is private property, and we, under no circumstances will we tolerate that, because we have an overloaded bus stop as it is. It's dangerous as it is. We have 250 homes, large percentage of those homes now have families, and it's chaos when the
Well,
kids get
that's
picked up.
something we should take up with the Board of Ed.
We will, again, thank you. But it's not directed at you guys, but I just want to make sure as much legal recording of situations are, so somebody could say I didn't say anything. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Does any other member of the public have any questions on the testimony we've heard so far tonight? No, let's proceed. You want to move
Right.
into your planning testimony then?
Yes, Mr. Ward, if you could just please provide for the board your experience, licenses, and qualifications in the field of professional planning.
Sure. So I am a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey by exam. I've testified as a planner before countless boards throughout Monmouth County, Ocean County, Middlesex, and further north. I did testify in front of this board, or have testified in front of this board multiple times, not only for the initial application for Verde Woods that was approved, but for other applications that this board has seen. I've had my professional license for 7 years in planning, still current and valid.
At this time, I ask the board accept him as an expert in the field of professional planning.
Any of the board members have any questions about his credentials as a planner? Seeing none, we accept your credentials.
Thank you. So before I delve into the planning testimony, I just want to preface this that nearly all that I'm about to say was testified to at the initial approval for this application. As we alluded to at the first meeting, this site and layout, aside from the homes changing, is really very close to what was approved by the board initially. So a lot of the testimony that the board allowed the grant of the use variance for is the same. So I'll dive right into it. Happy to say.
For the record, except for Dimitri, none of us, the rest of us, were here for that hearing.
And I'm going to go through
whatever
every
you say is new to us.
I'll go through the whole thing, Mr. Chair.
And maybe prefacing it too, with any of the changes we made, did it change or impact any of the relief that was previously granted last time?
No, it did not. So it doesn't affect any of the relief associated with the planning testimony. So, as the board knows, that this application previously was granted a D1 use variance for the proposal of 8 detached single-family homes. That is not a permitted use in the R4A2 zone, which allows for single-family detached dwellings, churches, schools, libraries, firehouses, historical museums, golf courses, farm uses, and municipal facilities. It allows for single-family attached dwellings. This zone allows for increased density by 2 ways, either a clustering provision, which is not applicable to this site of this size, or providing attached townhouses at 50% of the units of the development. Therein lies the D1 use variance. We are not attaching any of the units here. The development proposed and approved previously attempts to provide the feel of clustering while adhering to the density of an attached townhome development. If you look at the aerial of the property and some of the surrounding uses, you'll see a lot of wooded areas in our surround. You can see our development is a relatively small portion of this overall wooded area. And the wooded area is environmentally restricted by the state or by some township ordinances. This gives the feel of clustering in that a small portion of this wooded area is being developed with our development and looks like a cluster development from a 30,000-foot aerial view. The applicant, and this was the testimony prior, we're not suggesting this, but the applicant or any applicant could come before this board for this property with a townhouse development, fully attached, providing 13 units with an approved density. But the applicant here is proposing 5 less units than the 13 that's allowed by right and detaching them into single-family housing, which in our opinion has a softer visual aesthetic. In this regard, this is an appropriate use and development on a property that is suitable for the proposed improvements. The property is zoned residential, and this is a residential development. When viewed in light of the surrounding developments in the area, this development fits. We have Bow Ridge to our south, which is a higher density single-family attached development, or partially attached. There is another townhouse-style development further south across the Middletown border from our property, and we're surrounded by either streams or woods or single-family neighborhoods off of Laurel Avenue. This development has the look and feel of a residential development with access provided via a private road off of Laurel Ave. There's one important point that I added to my testimony previously. The case Price v. Himeji stated that when a board considers a D1 use variance, it must then consider the overall site design. And with that, as the D variance was granted previously, the requested C variances that were associated with it can be subsumed into that D variance approval. The other C variance we received for the initial application was a lighting intensity variance, which my prior testimony at the last application was that we felt that the lighting design offered is a safe arrangement for the development. The application advances the purposes of planning in the following ways. We have an appropriate use and development. We have direct access to a main road, Laurel Avenue, that can support the proposed use and also can support a higher density use like townhouses. The site topography lends itself to the design we've laid out. We have a high point at the west of the property that slopes toward Laurel Avenue, and the road is designed to work right within this slope. Additionally, the stormwater management basin is located at the lowest end of the property, again lending itself to the site design. The application secures safety from fire, flood, panic, and other natural man-made disasters. We have new construction built to the latest building codes, which is a safer arrangement. The development is outside of any New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection flood hazard area and well above the adjacent stream bed. We provide adequate emergency vehicle access on-site off of Laurel Avenue. Adequate light, air, and open space is provided. We meet all other bulk requirements, including coverage and setbacks, which inherently means we provide adequate open space. The buildings are spaced appropriately, a good distance from the street, the new street, and a good distance between the structures. Passive recreation is also proposed at the northwest corner of the site, and we testified to that last time, the purpose of that area. In the current condition or the prior condition, there was a garage there for the single-family home built within the township corridor. We're proposing to remove that garage and all those improvements and replace it with green space, this passive recreation area, which is more like a lawn for the residents to use for recreational purposes. This recreation area is in an area that there are steep slopes of the site, trying to bring it back to more of a green feel rather than develop it with more structures. The application promotes the establishment of appropriate population densities. We have a residential zone that allows for increased density. We're below that maximum increased density while preserving a large portion of the site adjacent to a stream corridor. The application promotes a desirable visual environment through creative design and arrangement. Most of the development is screened by existing wooded areas along Laurel and wooded areas to the north, south, and west. Those areas are to remain, and we're enhancing those with additional evergreen trees. A lot of these areas are protected by the ordinance and by the state of New Jersey. The proposed improvements are supplemented by our comprehensive landscape design that'll soften the structures and provide a feel of a natural surrounding environment and a typical residential street. The streetlights are acorn style and fit the neighborhood feel of the development. We're generally consistent with nearby residentially developed properties and will not change the neighborhood norm. This application fits within the State Development and Redevelopment Plan, the SDRP, which purpose is to coordinate planning activities and establish planning objectives across the state of New Jersey in land use, housing, economic development, transportation, natural resource conservation, agriculture, farmland retention, recreation, urban and suburban development, historic preservation, public facilities and services, and intergovernmental coordination. The SDRP divided the state into areas of growth, limited growth, and conservation. Our site in particular is in a suburban planning area, PA2, which is an area for growth. Some of the goals of this suburban planning area include guiding development and redevelopment into more compact forms to achieve balanced communities. I feel that what we are proposing before the board tonight accomplishes this. Encouraging densities capable of supporting transit, limiting sprawl, and transit times is a purpose of the SDRP. We're on a main road, Laurel Avenue, through town, which provides access to larger infrastructure and commercial business centers adjacent to the property. This development doesn't require major utility extensions either. And most importantly, we're protecting the character of an existing stable community while protecting natural resources on site. For the negative criteria, we feel there's no substantial impact from the development. The proposed improvements are screened from neighboring uses and Laurel Avenue with existing wooded areas and supplemental plantings. Traffic impact is de minimis, as was testified to previously and at the last meeting. Traffic generation from 8 units is very little in the grand scheme of things. This site can handle the proposed development. We have a residential use and a residential zone, and we fit the character of the neighborhood. Accordingly, proposed development would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. As established in the positive criteria, this proposal is consistent with the land use pattern in the area and promotes the many tenets of the land use law. The purpose of the R40A zone is to zone existing areas in a manner consistent with existing development in the R40A. The design standards of the zone are intended to provide flexibility in design so that the vistas and views in the remaining undeveloped areas will be preserved as much as possible by locating homes over crests of hills, behind existing trees, like we're doing, and in locations that will minimize the appearance of development. We feel this application accomplishes these purposes. The Township's 2010 Master Plan Reexamination Report provides land use goals and objectives: protection and proper management of natural resources, removing development away from the protected area on site, removing existing development, the stream corridor, and revegetating this protected area. Encouraging high-quality design. We feel this is an appropriate and well-thought-out design for this specific property, particularly with the changes with the new applicant. So, in our opinion, the proposed development does not substantially impair the intent and purpose of zoning plan, excuse me. So on balance, it's my opinion that the benefits of this application substantially outweigh its detriments, if any, giving this board the ability to approve this application with confidence, which they did at the initial application. So that would conclude my direct planning.
Also, as part of the prior application, I believe there's some design waivers that were also granted with respect to driveway width and parking aisle. And I'll note in the resolution from 2017, it noted RSIS requires 25 feet. We're proposing 24 feet. The prior design had a hammerhead kind of end as opposed to the bulb cul-de-sac, correct?
That's correct.
And as noted in that resolution, with the hammerhead, we could widen it to 25 feet and conform, but it was a board's preference for the bulb cul-de-sac, which could only be achieved with the 24-foot aisle width. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. This was the option. We presented the board with two options, and this was the desired option, which we agree with.
And then there was detention basin slopes, having a maximum side slope of 10 by 1, where the applicant is proposing 3 by 1, and there was waiver granted for that as well.
Correct.
There was drainage pipe material, where the ordinance requires storm drain pipes to be reinforced by concrete or corrugated steel, where we're proposing, you can probably pronounce it better than I, polypropylene pipes?
HDPE.
There you go.
Yes, and that's more of the shift of development is going towards more of the synthetic pipe, the HDPE pipe, and Mr. Buckle had no issue with it back then.
There was a parking setback, I think, for a space near Unit 8, where 20 feet is required, and it's at 19 feet.
Correct, and that dimension is still holds, so that waiver would still be in effect.
And then shade trees required to be 20 feet from the edge of paving, where the applicant proposes approximately 10 feet. That still exists, and we're seeking a deviation.
Correct, and I think that particular design standard is more for public right-of-way. This is not that, more of a close-knit neighborhood residential feel. This is a private road, so hence the relief sought.
And all those design waivers that the board previously granted, you still believe remain reasonable, and the board has the ability to grant them again as part of this application?
I do.
I have nothing further from a direct presentation from a planning
I
perspective.
got a question. You said something about a lighting variance. What is that related to?
So there was I'm
I'm going to interrupt here because again, this is a unique situation because this is not technically a townhouse or multifamily development. It's technically a single family development. But one thing I will say is that the lighting ordinance was changed about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, because previously the township ordinance for anything besides a single family residential property, the maximum permitted was 1 foot candle, which is why almost every single application required a lighting variance. That's not really achievable. It's now 10. I looked at the plan. I'll defer to Bob on this, but I think there's been some changes to the ordinance so that they're not really out of they're within the ordinance.
I think our maximum, what was granted was a maximum intensity of 3.1 foot candle, where at the time 1 was the maximum permitted.
And that maximum has now been changed to 10.
Great.
okay, so that's all.
Which is in line with generally accepted standards.
Correct.
I agree.
I know it sounds like a lot, but the township
So,
was
in
not.
other words,
So in
that
the end, we don't-
variance is not needed.
It was a waiver, and so that's no longer
Waiver.
applicable.
Yes,
Thank you.
so.
Okay.
Just for the record, you're still at 3.1 max? Is that what I just?
Yeah, I believe so. I could just check real quick. I don't believe the lighting changed at all.
No, I just like.
I can't really read it.
Yeah, no. 3.6.
It's 3.6, yes.
3.6?
Hey, Marty,
Yes. Yes.
on the green area, do we need to get specific as to what that use is there? Can they put a playground? Could they put a baseball field there? Does it have to just remain plain grass?
It's, So go ahead, Bob.
I was just going to say, there's really no room
Right.
for that activity. I mean, it was brought to my attention, and I looked at it. There's just no room to put any type of playground or tot lot or things of that nature.
Did you also mention that there's slopes in that area?
Right.
Portion of it?
There, let me just answer that comment here. So the lawn area is, I would say, relatively flat, but you know, at the northwest and the west side of it, it does start to head towards the stream pretty quickly. So I agree with Bob that there's no room for something like that, and we're proposing it as lawn, which will be part of the approval and remain as lawn.
So be it in the resolution that way, Marty.
Well, there'll be no requirement for any passive recreation such as playgrounds and stuff. It'll just be what's shown on the plans. I mean, unless you want to make it that they can never put anything there, it's not going to say that. It's just going to be what the plans depict, which is just grass area.
And it will be accessible to residents, though.
100%.
Yes, maybe that's something you could put in the resolution, that it will be accessible as non-programmed passive recreation for residents or something like that. Is that appropriate? Do you think that that's appropriate?
I say that's fair,
Okay,
yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members about the testimony we've just heard? It's one, looking at the reduced plan, it's a little bit hard to tell, but I believe to the left on that plan, there is an area which is going to become a conservation easement.
That's correct. So with the township corridor rules, I'll go back to how the site was previously developed. There was a portion of a driveway and a garage structure, a large garage structure within the corridor, which probably predated the corridor rules. We're proposing to remove that, and the ordinance allows you to average the corridor. So we're encroaching into it and providing the corridor to kind of bump out towards the west. Anything that's not to be cleared as part of this development, which is really what on the aerial you could see as the aerial, that'll be in a conservation easement, and that's what the plan shows.
Okay, and do the notes, and I can't read them here.
It's okay.
So indicate that that conservation easement will be deed restricted and monumented according to the ordinance.
Correct. Has to be monumented with visible markers and will be recorded. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you. Kate?
Yes, I was just going to say, if no other board members have questions, I don't have any direct questions for the applicant, but I just wanted to provide a little context for the board on this.
Should we do no public questions first?
Well, let Kate go ahead.
It's kind of related, so it might help the public as well. So, this is kind of a unique application in a few ways. One is that, just the nature of this application and the way that the prior resolution was written is that, there's cases where an applicant can come back and request a condition of approval be eliminated. That's not the case here. The way that the prior ordinance was written, in order to not have, if the school bus stop couldn't be, put in place there by the Board of Education, the applicant had to come back for a full amended site plan application. So even though, the density, the number of units, anything like that has not specifically changed since the prior approval, I think it's important that the applicant did put on this testimony tonight, especially given the time that's passed and the lack of members who were previously on the board. So, I understand the position that the applicant's attorney has taken, but, they still put all of the information on the record, and I think it was presented clearly and well. The other thing is, more about this specific application, which is that from a use variance perspective, it's very rare to see a use variance for less intense than what's permitted on the site. And I'm not sure if you could fit it on this specific site, but per the zoning, the applicant could have put up to 13 townhouses if all other things were considered, just based on the acreage of the property. And I don't want to get, too deep in the weeds on this, but basically the reason that this is a D1 variance as opposed to a different type of variance for density or something like that is really because this is an older ordinance that applies to very few tracts, and it was written back I would say we're going back 25 plus years, back at a time when the township was kind of looking for creative ways to get, affordable housing contributions and things like that. So, the way that the ordinance has changed in a lot of other ways, but this zone was never changed. So, it's pretty unique that, you can build 13 townhouses, but you couldn't even build 6 single-family houses on here. So I think that, when you're evaluating this, besides if you're pretending the prior application didn't happen, you can really look at it and say, if just from the use variance perspective, what's the difference? What's the difference in impact of, just on the surrounding properties, on traffic, on everything? If you have 8 homes that are basically the same size as there could be 13 townhouses of the same number of bedrooms, et cetera, which is really what by the book the township had set forth for this. So it's a kind of a unique situation here where, they're kind of looking for an increase in density, but they're kind of not. It's really townhouses versus single family. So I think that really gets to the crux of it. So it's really a pretty unique application in a lot of ways. It was in 2017, and that's why the board at that time, put a lot of thought into the decisions that they made then. And so, the situation has changed. There's a new contract purchaser, new potential developer, and so that's why they're here again. And I think that they've done they've done a good job of explaining the changes and, made a lot of improvements in terms of, their relationships with the neighbors, in terms of, more thoughtful layouts and more thoughtful housing design. So I don't have any further comments or questions for the applicant or the witness, but, I'm happy to answer any questions from the board or, whichever.
Thank you, Kate.
Sure.
Bob, do you have any questions or comments at this point?
No, Mr. Chairman, mine were all taken care of earlier.
Good. Thank you. Any board member questions at this point? Well, Marty, do you want to comment?
No, well, I can comment, just following the theory, it may help the public. So, obviously, everything Kate said is correct. I mean, we just had a use variance application, but that was inherently beneficial, so it's a little bit different. That was approved at the last hearing, but in this case, it is very rare. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it, where you have a less intense use instead of what's permitted. I will say at the prior, I was here for the prior, as Dimitri was, and I know one of the members of the public is here from Bow Ridge, but there were many members from Bow Ridge at the prior hearing, and they spoke out against the application. I don't want to characterize it, but I'm just summarizing essentially that one of the main concerns, amongst others, was that bus stop, which is why that condition went in the way it did, and that was agreed to by the applicant at the time, the applicant's counsel. It wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was essentially, probably without that condition, it's probably fair to say the vote may have gone a different way. We don't know that, but that's kind of some of the feedback the board members were talking about at the time. So I think it's good to see that we do have the representative here from Bow Ridge, or at least a resident of Bow Ridge, and the agreements that you guys had with each other went a long way. As we can tell, there's one member of the public here at this hearing from Bow Ridge, which is a far cry from what it was back in 2017. So that's a furtherance of what Kate said about this uniqueness of this application.
Yes, yeah. The one thing I would, just Marty, just to follow up on that, because you mentioned, was recently an application for an inherently beneficial use, and the difference between an inherently beneficial use and a regular so-called D1 variance is, really showing particular suitability for the use. And again, this is really unique because you rarely have a case where the applicant is asking to put fewer residences in a residential zone. So, I think that kind of speaks for itself on that. So, yeah, I think that the testimony addressed that as well.
So, I'll just conclude. So we do need 5 affirmative votes. In our opinion, that's what we need. It's an amended use variance application. I'm just letting the board know that. So, we need 5 yes votes at the time that this a motion is made, if a motion is made for approval.
Well, we haven't gotten quite to that point yet.
Could I ask
Sure.
one question before
Sure.
we, I assume that either a school bus or a fire truck could turn around in that cul-de-sac?
Yes, the cul-de-sac's designed to the RSIS standards, provides the appropriate radius as if this was a public road. So yes, we have the full, and that was testified to initially and subsequently by the traffic consultant.
I think in the drawing set, there is a,
We show a
showing a
vehicle
turning
circulation.
movement.
This one here is for the fire truck.
And, Mr. Chairman, and if my memory serves me right, this was brought before the Township Fire Department,
That's correct.
and they reviewed the design and approved it.
Okay, good. Okay, with that, I think it's appropriate to open the floor for questions from any member of the public on the testimony that we've just heard. Is there anyone here who would like to ask a question about this testimony? Please come forward. Where'd the mic go?
Oh, yeah.
It's okay.
I like switching.
Yeah. Please identify yourself, your name and address for the record.
Christine Height, 5 Boxwood Terrace, Holmdel. So 2 quick questions. Just because you brought up the turning around of the bus or the fire truck, does that also take into account when there's snow on the ground? Because I live in a cul-de-sac in my Boxwood Terrace, and when they push the snow, nothing could turn around there. So that was just something that, just to take into account, because at
Bob?
least in my cul-de-sac, when they push it away, the snow, they only leave a small little area. Buses can't turn around. So I was just throwing that out.
Right, well, if you heard the testimony, it's a private road. So it'd be just like,
So it'd be plowed by.
so they're going to have a homeowners association,
Oh, right.
and they're going to have to maintain and plow that. Now,
That makes sense.
if you're, it's just like your house, how would you plow your driveway?
Got it.
You know, so
Got it.
you can only assume that they would do the right thing.
You want to comment?
Makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Bob's sentiment on that. It is a private road, so the onus is on the HOA.
And I have one last question.
Wait one second, we lost our, just want to make sure he hears your questions.
Gotcha.
All right, sorry about that.
Go ahead.
So I brought this up last time. I actually love that you guys kept this little patch of all of that trees and brush still there. That's awesome. My question is, if say 5 years from now, the residents, are they allowed to chop any of that down? Are they allowed to say, oh, I didn't like that tree? I understand the trees die and they get replaced. Is that also up to the HOA to keep up with, oh, you can't take that down, that all has to be maintained?
Well, I believe that that's going to be in the conservation easement. That's going to be monumented,
Is that
and they will not be
clustered?
able to touch that. It'll be deed restricted.
That little spot that I just pointed to?
Yes, if
How
it's in the
about the-
conservation easement.
How about
Yes.
that line of trees in the back by the fence?
They're
That
putting
wall,
that in
my
here?
screen, yeah. How about those? I know that that's not easement, so could that be taken down?
Again, that would be up to the homeowners association. Those to the north you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah,
The ones that
Or
are
even
shown
the
there?
ones to the south by Bow Ridge.
So I would say that the individual residents don't have the power, or say freedom is the wrong word, to change the landscaping. It's an HOA issue. Bob is correct that that tree stand that's being preserved it's shown on the plans to be within a conservation easement. The newly planted trees are not, but the landscaping is not under the control of the individual homeowners.
Could that be memorialized in some way in their HOA, that they are to keep those screens, if that was part of the application, that they would keep that they're not 5 years from now and be like, we're going to take them down?
I can't comment on how the HOA could be written, but they're going to be shown on the approved and final signed site plan, so they are enforceable from the township's perspective, if I'm not mistaken.
So if I-
They would have to
chop
come
them
in, they would
down-
have to come in and get a tree removal permit from the township in order to take those trees down. Now, if they take them down illegally,
But if I found that they did take them down,
Then you could-
what help could I get?
you got to come here to the township and report it.
I would also note that based on the plans, the new trees along the Bow Ridge side would appear to be in the conservation easement.
Yes.
So that's even stricter, that's deed restricted. Yes, it's shown on the plans. But again, there's if it's on a final signed site plan, there is recourse even if it's not in the deed, even if it's not in a conservation easement.
Is there a question from the public?
Yeah.
Because this is a follow-on from what Christine said. I know in Bow Ridge, it was our homeowners association, Nancy Cagliostro, 214, Pebble Beach Court, Holmdel. I know that our association is bound by keeping certain parts of our community intact, such as the Hendrickson Cemetery. So that was built in, that we have no rights to make any changes on that. So there must be some way to ensure Christine has some guarantees on the border trees. And I believe ours are in an easement, conservation easement. So that gives us some protection there. We just would hate to see all of these things that we worked so hard to negotiate, have them disappear.
We don't know what your approval had, because it might have been, like you said, in a conservation easement or something else that was recorded. I mean, the HOA documents, I mean, if there's, depending on what they say, they can always be amended. So then it's out of our control.
Right.
So I'm not sure I'm sure the maintenance is in your HOA. It may be in there, but it may be also in a conservation easement or some other recorded document that was required at the time of that approval.
Yeah, I don't know the exact details
have
of how that was struck, but I know there's certain things we're not allowed to touch as an HOA.
Well, I'm just going to ask Marty, to you, could this be put in the developer's agreement?
We could put it in, but again, if it's required that the HOA documents have some kind of, that they maintain that, there's nothing that stops them from amending the HOA documents in the future.
The only
think
thing
the
is
biggest-
what's good is when there is at least something recorded as a requirement for that HOA, that if there is something done, we have something to come to the town with, as opposed to, by that time, all of you could be living in Pennsylvania.
But I think that the town wouldn't get involved in an HOA issue. I think the biggest enforcement you have is the approved plans have landscaping there. They took it down without approvals, without a tree removal permit, in violation of the plan, and then the zoning officer would have to enforce, issue a violation until they replace the tree.
Well, one potential would be that on the south side, the conservation easement does extend all along the border. Now, whether those particular added trees are in it or not, I can't tell from the scale here.
Yeah, so
It appears they are.
I'll clarify that. I don't believe the newly planted, the proposed trees are within that. The conservation easement lines the preserved trees. I think that's the intent of a conservation easement, is to keep what's there. I agree with a couple of folks that have said that this plan will ultimately be signed by the township and board officials, and it's part of the township's files, so there is teeth on the township side for enforcement through zoning and code enforcement for a replanting or whatever penalties that the town has.
Yeah, would it make any sense to extend a similar strip of, there isn't the same natural woodland along the northern property line?
Yeah, I think, I'm just looking at the plan, I do stand corrected that it's hard to tell from that plan, but yes, I'm looking at the detailed landscaping plan, and yes, the existing tree cover will be within this conservation easement on the south, the new ones will not be, but again, the approved site plan is binding.
Something that's recorded.
The landscape east does that.
Yeah, it doesn't know.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, yeah, the fact that the site plan gets recorded is probably the biggest protection. Okay. Anyone else have questions about the testimony we've just heard from the planner? Board members have any other questions? Okay.
Ralph, yeah, so
Sure, go
I guess what's the follow-up now with the Board of Ed and seeing what the status will be of the busing situation? Because this looks eerily familiar to my development with the cul-de-sac, and we've had quite a few issues in the past 6 months with K-turns with the busing, and then actually the bus damaged a car in the cul-de-sac and things like that. So I just wanted to see what the follow-up is with the Board of Ed, if any.
Well, there really is none. The Board of Ed, they've been crystal clear with us. They're not committing to anything. They don't even know if there's a need for a bus stop here. If or when they determine there is a need, and again, also the prior testimony was, these are not age restricted. They are kind of age targeted with respect to how the units are designed. So the expectation is there's not going to be many families here with kids. But if and when they decide we need to have a bus stop there, they talk to the town, they talk to the police department and determine the appropriate location. Most likely, it'll be on Laurel Avenue, just as they currently do in picking up kids, but they're not going to commit one way or the other until they know there's a need and they talk to the appropriate parties. Because things may change traffic-wise, development-wise. If it's 7, 8 years from now, they determine there's a need, it could be a different landscape and a different decision than it is today.
I can't speak for the Board of Ed, and they've spoken and said they're not going to make it, but having been on the Board of Ed for a number of years, bus stops are decided every year separately because there are separate bus routes for each of the schools. As kids age, they go from one school to the next. There are also bus routes that take kids to the various private schools. So from one year to the next, it's rarely the same. So basically, every year they have to redesign the bus routes based on the age of the kids, which schools they're going to. And it's their responsibility to have a safe arrangement so that every kid gets safely to school and back home again. So I think it's really outside of our scope to say anything about that, and it's their responsibility to come up with a safe plan. And to add to what the attorney indicated, it's also in this case the county involvement because it's a county road.
And I would just to follow that up, I agree with that, and not merits of the prior resolution aside, I think having reviewed the correspondence from the Board of Ed on this matter and just in general, it's kind of a different situation than your typical outside agency approvals because, as the chairman just said, the bus routes are they're not based specifically on what's going on this site. The bus routes are township-wide, they're school-wide, and the Board of Ed, they're reserving that right to update it every year as opposed to, we require something like a NJDEP approval. That is not, there's nothing outside of this site that affects, your wetlands permit, typically. But, so I think that's where kind of the confusion lies because obviously we do defer to outside agencies sometimes, but the way that the Board of Ed operates, it's not, they've really, in their letters, they basically made the case that they can't commit to it and they won't.
Yeah, because any particular year for one particular school, there may be nobody.
Right. When the parents have kids, all of a sudden you have kids in 3 different schools. Yeah. Exactly. Everyone turns one age up and they're all in different schools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that complete the public questions on the testimony we've had so far? Do you want to continue?
Sure. We have no further witnesses. I don't really have a summation, considering it's so close to what my introduction was. I think my introduction kind of also can double as my summation, so I'm fine with the board opening it up for public comment at this time.
Okay. So first, do any board members have any questions or comments right now? We'll come back. In that case, with the board's consent, we'll open it to public comment on any aspect of this application. Would either of you like to make a comment of any nature on this application? Seeing everybody shaking their head no, we'll close the public comment. Then you have no further summation?
I have no further summation. I think the witnesses and the board professionals kind of summarized it adequately, and we rest on that.
Kate or Bob, was there any final comments either of you would like to make?
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing for me either. Thank you.
Okay. I can't see you, Dimitri, but do you have any questions or comments at this point?
No, I have none. Thank you. Everything has been addressed.
Good. Marty, would you like to summarize the conditions that have been agreed to before we get to a motion or a discussion? So we're all aware of what we're potentially agreeing to.
I would love to. I'm just going back just to check the prior meeting. I think a lot of those were addressed tonight, so I'm just gonna check my notes. To the pads.
This is not, if something is missed tonight, obviously whatever's on the testimony will be part of the resolution, but the ones that we have this evening include the ones from the prior hearing. You can extend the sidewalk all the way around the bulb of the cul-de-sac. They're going to make remove the ramp that they had proposed. On the parking for the visitors to east, they're going to add another piece of sidewalk over there for the connection. A row of trees near Laurel Avenue, they're going to clean out any old scrub that's there as they look to maintain any trees that are healthy. They're going to add a depressed curve and a crosswalk at that last space as well. That's really toward the beginning by Laurel Avenue. Obviously, the conservation easement, they'll file the township ordinance to monument it, and they're going to submit a proposed conservation easement to be approved and then record it. They will make a condition that the green space, for lack of better designation, at the end of the cul-de-sac is accessible to the residents in the development for what I'll call passive use. There'll be no installed play area. And get the conservation easement, and those are the conditions I have.
Bob?
Marty, are you going to make any comment about the lighting? Because now it doesn't...
Well, that's gone, right.
Right, it doesn't need a waiver anymore?
Correct. So as we said, that's out now, so that's one relief that we don't need from the prior hearing.
Correct.
Prior application.
With that, does anyone have any of the questions, comments they'd like to make at this point? Would someone like to make a motion of approval subject to all the conditions that Marty just referred to?
I will motion to approve the variance, subject to all the conditions that the attorney just discussed.
Is
I'd
there a
like to second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Dimitri, any comments?
No comments.
Okay, may I have a roll call on the motion, please?
Mr. Orphanatopoulos,
Dimitri, you're being called for.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal,
Yes?
Mr. Burkle,
Yes.
Mr. Luciani,
Yes.
Ms. Gerhart,
Yes.
Mr. Giampolo,
Yes.
Dr. Shaw.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome, and as follows the normal procedure, our attorney will be preparing a resolution, and that the time, it's probably going to be 4 weeks or so till we can get that on the agenda, and we'll be discussing shortly. We're short of agenda for February, so we may be canceling one of those meetings.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, going on to the remainder of our agenda. Francine?
She's taking back over.
Huh?
She's coming back up. Take it over.
Yeah. So Francine will take her seat in place of, and Dr. Shaw will not be seated for these items. Well, we may need you for one or two of them. Okay, we have draft meeting minutes from 3 meetings in last year. So the new members aren't eligible for this. And since Dr. Irfan is not here, then we will seat you for these items. First of all, and we've gotten draft minutes for these from Loretta. Does anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes of any of those 3 dates? There was an error in the ones of October 19th, and she resent that out with the revisions. So does anybody have any other edits or corrections to the 3 minutes of September 21, October 5th, and October 19th? If not, can we have a resolution to approve those minutes?
I'd motion to approve those minutes.
Second?
I'll second that motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. Then we have a draft resolution with regard to Holmdel storage from our attorney. It's went through a number of revisions, and most of which were very minor, and
circulated to, or obviously our board professionals and besides the board, as well as the applicant's attorney. And the version you have before you is several small typo-type modifications.
yeah. Does anyone have any other edits or corrections to the resolution? Dimitri, are you with us yet?
I am, and I have none. Marty made everything we suggested.
Yep.
I just have a comment with a picture of the revised plan before.
Yeah.
Do it according to his changes. We have something to go back on.
That is part of
Yeah.
the approved resolution and site plan.
It's special, it's one of the special conditions. Yeah.
Good.
I can point it out.
Marty's looking it up.
Those are the exact conditions.
General condition 1.
Yeah, I mean, even just the fact that it's, that
It's on the
that
record,
plan is
right.
referenced in the resolution, they're not getting any permits unless it's substantially similar.
Right, so it's special condition number 11. So I'll just send it over. It includes your windows, that you made a comment about the windows too. So if you want to quickly look that over before you, but it's on the record also, as indicated by Kate.
Yes.
Yeah, we actually referenced the exhibit number.
No, 'cause I know that was a big concern for the board.
And the shingles.
Any other comments on the draft resolution? If not, is there a motion to approve the draft resolution? And this needs to be those who voted to approve that project.
So the only people that can vote are Dimitri, Ralph, Francine, and Gaurav.
Correct. Okay.
One of you four have to make the motion.
Okay, so who would like to make the motion to approve this?
I'll make the motion. How's that?
Thank you, Dimitri. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Orphanopoulos,
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal,
Yes.
Ms. Campus, Dr. Shah.
Yes.
The resolution is approved. Item 4 on our agenda is the resolution for 12 Jennifer Drive, which we have not yet received, so we'll table that to a subsequent meeting. One last item, we have 2 currently scheduled meetings in February 1st and February 15th. At the moment, there are no agenda items, meaning no new applications for either of those dates. However, We do need, and this comes back to Marty, the 12 Jennifer Drive, you anticipate having that before February 1st?
Yes.
And Courtney has indicated that the property owner is anxious to get going. They want a swimming pool in this weather. So anyway, what would happen then is, for now, we will keep February 1st on the calendar. We will not cancel it. It may be a very short meeting just to approve that one resolution. February 15th, we'll wait and see if something else would come on, but that's distinctly also the potential that that meeting gets canceled for lack of agenda. So for Feb 1st, if the only item is the 12 Jennifer Drive one, the no folks or whoever wasn't here for that hearing doesn't need to be present.
I can let everyone,
No, we just need a quorum to
yeah,
open the
I
meeting.
can let everyone know,
Yeah,
you know,
Yeah, February 1st.
right.
next week, yeah.
So we just need a quorum of 4. I can,
Yeah, so Courtney will check what it is once we get the resolution.
yeah.
Is there any other business for this evening? Is there a motion to adjourn?
All motion to adjourn?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's a motion that never gets any no's. Okay, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night, Dimitri.
Jason, I appreciate your help.
All the best to you, father-in-law.
Yeah, good
Thank
luck.
you, and we'll do this again next Wednesday.
All right, sounds good.
Next Wednesday?
Bye-bye.
Oh, wait, is it next Wednesday?
Yeah, well, that's